After the notorious thug Jang Chen met his end in Season 1 of The Outlaws, a new evil figure emerges in South Korea feared for his ruthless and cold-blooded ways. But recently, he had slipped into Vietnam and gotten involved in a kidnapping-for-ransom scheme. Their latest target? A naive, privileged heir named Choi Young-ji. As the son of a wealthy conglomerate chairman, Choi was lured to the outskirts by local thugs posing as businessmen. Smiling and unaware of the trap, he got into their car completely oblivious to the danger. He had just walked into an ambush set by his own countrymen.
너 돈 많다며. 이발 새끼들아! 독하는 사람으로 보여. 너 납치된 거야.
After a savage beating, Choi Young-ji managed to escape the car while the kidnappers were distracted, but he didn't get far. They tackled him to the ground and dragged him back. While one thug tried to educate him with threats, the most dangerous man of the group, Kang Hae-sang, approached carrying a machete.
오라이 새끼네? 미쳤어?
대가리 하나 줄어서 좋지.
That night, when it came time to bury the body, Kang Hae-sang cut off Choi Young-ji's arm, took a photo of it alongside his passport, and sent it to Choi's father. He demanded a ransom of 1 billion won, but where there's crime, there's Ma Seok-do. At that same time, Ma Seok-do was assigned a new task: travel to Vietnam to extradite a thief who had just turned himself in. 2 years ago, a gang robbed a jewelry store, and one of the suspects had recently surrendered at the consulate. Ma Seok-do's job was to bring him back to Korea. At the consulate, Ma Seok-do confronted the cocky suspect, demanding the whereabouts of his accomplices. The suspect remained smug and uncooperative. He snapped and ordered the captain to shut off the surveillance cameras, then slammed his fists on the desk again and again. The suspect, now terrified and ears ringing, quickly gave up the address, but when they arrived, they found the accomplice already brutally murdered. Back at the consulate, Ma Seok-do interrogated the suspect again, demanding he spill everything he'd done in Vietnam. Realizing his accomplice was dead, the man panicked. Ma Seok-do suspected he had surrendered to escape Kang Hae-sang. When the man refused to give more information, Ma Seok-do let him go intentionally.
당했어 이 새끼야.
아니 형사님 저 자제했는데요. 나가자. 여기 베트남에서 강혜상이라는 새끼를 만나서 저희가 사람을 납치했어요.
누구 강혜상?
Turns out, the suspect once teamed up with Kang Hae-sang to kidnap Choi Young-gun, but after receiving the ransom, Kang's demeanor changed. Fearing for his life, the man fled and turned himself in. Following the lead he gave, Ma Seok-do tracked down a dead body. It wasn't just Choi Young-ji's body, there were others. It was clear Kang Hae-sang had done this before. Since Ma Seok-do had no jurisdiction here, he had no choice but to contact a local fixer to gather information, and from him, he learned that a gang called La 9 was also looking for Kang Hae-sang's whereabouts. Ma Seok-do and the team leader then went to La 9's turf, hoping to get some clues about Kang Hae-sang from them.
라꾸라꾸 침대인지 뭐 개 좀 불러와봐.
아저씨들 누군데? 야, 누워 있어. 누워 있어. 어? 다쳐.
얼로. 까불고 있어. 네가 라꾸냐? 이 새끼가 사람을 죽이려고 일로 와. 죽이지 말라고 확 죽여버려.
저희 돈 받고 위치만 알려준 거라 자세한 건 몰라요.
선수들? 강혜상이 찾았어?
저기 까불이가 안 나십니다.
After a little tough talk from Ma Seok-do, they finally revealed Kang Hae-sang's home address. Meanwhile, Choi Chun-baek, after learning that his son Choi Young-ji had been executed by Kang Hae-sang, had already sent assassins to sneak into Kang Hae-sang's house. Not long after, Kang Hae-sang returned home, unaware the killers were already lying in wait inside. But just as he was about to step in, he suddenly froze, sensing something was off, and turned around to enter another room. As one of the assassins quietly reached for the doorknob, Kang Hae-sang suddenly grabbed his arm and dragged him inside, and soon after, chilling screams echoed from the room, terrifying the other killers into total stillness. A few minutes later, Kang Hae-sang opened the door with a murderous glare, and his man entered the room. With the two outlaws going full force, every assassin was taken down. Kang Hae-sang opened the wardrobe and discovered that all the ransom money he'd collected over the years had vanished, driving him into a rage as he hacked at the killer repeatedly until the man was barely recognizable, then forced the truth from him. When he learned that Choi Yong-ji's father was behind it, Kang Hae-sang called Choi Chun-baek directly, demanding he return the money, or else he'd come back to Korea and take his life. At that moment, Ma Seok-do and the team leader arrived, only to find the room littered with bodies, realizing they were too late. As they searched for clues, Kang Hae-sang suddenly burst out from hiding, slashing the unsuspecting team leader in the shoulder.
와, 씨발. 네가 강혜상이냐? 칼 내려, 이 새끼야.
Ma Seok-do broke free and rushed outside, but by then Kang Hae-sang had already fled on a motorcycle. Ma Seok-do used some special methods on one of the thugs and found out Kang Hae-sang was likely heading back to Korea to demand ransom from Choi Jung-bae. That intel pushed Ma and his captain to rush back as well, realizing the assassination had failed. Choi Chun-baek knew Kang Hae-sang wouldn't let it go, so he ordered his assistant to hire top-tier assassins no matter the cost to protect him. Meanwhile, Kang Hae-sang, now back in Korea, recruited two more desperate criminals to help him. Once everything was ready, Kang Hae-sang followed Choi Chun-baek into an elevator.
강혜상입니다. 내 돈 어디 있어?
At the same time, his two partners confronted the hired assassins in the parking lot. Kang Hae-sang successfully captured Choi Chun-baek and recorded a ransom video. When Choi's wife received the footage, she immediately sought out Ma Seok-do for help. Soon after, Kang Hae-sang called her, demanding the ransom, and she claimed she couldn't drive and needed a driver to deliver the money, to which Kang Hae-sang reluctantly agreed. Knowing the driver role was crucial, Ma Seok-do refused to use a police officer and instead dragged in Jang Su, the man who had barely survived Season 1, without even asking for his consent. Meanwhile, Kang Hae-sang was mapping out his escape route. Once he got the ransom, he could bolt from Korea immediately, so he contacted a human smuggler to make the escape happen. On the day of the exchange, Ma Seok-do had a large force tailing Jang Su's car. Kang Hae-sang didn't appear in person, sending his two helpers instead to scout the surroundings. Just a shady-looking car following close behind, so they slammed on the brakes, avoid drawing attention. The undercover vehicle kept going, which pushed Ma Seok-do to personally join the pursuit. Kang Hae-sang began changing the transaction location multiple times to throw the police off completely. Meanwhile, one of Ma Seok-do's men tracked Kang Hae-sang's vehicle to an abandoned rooftop. Inside the building, he found Choi Chun-baek tied up, but just as he was escorting him out, Kang Hae-sang suddenly showed up from behind. Seeing the police backup arriving, Kang Hae-sang had no choice but to retreat. He then called his two helpers, ordering them to cancel the deal and retreat, but blinded by greed, they refused. In order to get the money, Kang Hae-sang turned his car around to chase after them. The two henchmen, now fully defiant, forced Jang Su's car to stop. Realizing their intent to rob the ransom, Jang Su quickly turned the car around and fled, with the two in hot pursuit. Panicking, Jang drove into an underground parking lot, and just as he and Mrs. Choi stepped out to seek shelter in a mall, the two helpers caught up to them. Mrs. Choi ran into the mall for safety, while Jang Su drove off with the money, and the henchmen split up. One chased her, the other went after the car. At that moment, the police arrived. Jang Su stared at the suitcase full of cash and decided to keep it for himself, slamming the pedal and escaping the garage, while the henchman was arrested on the spot. Meanwhile, the other henchman caught up to Mrs. Choi in the mall and was demanding to know where the driver went when Ma Seok-do arrived.
나가세요, 빨리.
At the same time, Jang Su, ecstatic about his sudden fortune, was dancing with joy until a car slammed into him from behind. As the car stopped, Jang realized it was Kang Hae-sang and ran off with the suitcase, with Kang chasing after him. Jang Su managed to jump into a taxi and escape, leaving Kang Hae-sang fuming with rage. Two traffic cops happened to pass by and unfortunately became the target of his fury. In the end, the ransom money landed in Jang Su's hands, and as he stared at the mountain of cash, tears of joy welled up. He had finally hit the jackpot. That night, just as Jang Su was preparing to flee the country, Kang Hae-sang stopped him in his tracks.
야, 이 젖 같은 새끼야.
너네 누군지 아니?
니 누군데?
이리 오라 이 개새끼. 개새끼야. 너 이 개새끼 운 좋은 줄 알라.
After Kang left, Jang secretly followed him and saw him board a bus, immediately notifying Ma Seok-do. The bus Kang Hae-sang was escaping on was quickly intercepted in a tunnel, and the one leading the search was none other than Ma Seok-do. For everyone's safety, Ma Seok-do cleared the bus of all passengers and shut the doors behind him, kicking off one final showdown.
어떻게 버스를 쫓아올 생각을 했네. 보기보다 머리가 좋아.
좋은 편이야. 넌 그냥 좀 맞아야 돼.